episode, and some of you may have seen this, we asked our friends, family, and users what type of shit in the world has got them down. Big surprise, a lot of people share that the current political, social, and literal climate of the world is making it hard to stay motivated, which I think many of us can relate to, myself included. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about how to stay afloat when it feels like the world is falling apart with our guest expert and head of coaching, Megan Merck. Thank you so much for being here, Megan.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Listen, as I said, the survey spoke, and lots of people are feeling this way. It feels like it's been one thing after another. You know, we had some political upheaval, then the pandemic happened, then there was more political upheaval. There's been, a lot of marked climate change. The economy has made some shifts. A lot of folks are getting laid off. And so it really just feels like everybody's personal resources are being completely exhausted. What do you do when it just feels like everything is just piling up and there's no end in sight?
Yes, and it certainly has been a lot. And I think the first thing that always comes to mind to me that I want to make sure that clients know is we want to be real about it, right? We don't want to ignore it. We don't want to pretend that it's not happening or that it shouldn't be as bothersome to us or that we should be able to ignore or persevere or kind of move on, right? We all do have finite capacity, right? Which is something that you were speaking about. And it's not to say that that's finite, that it can never be replenished. There are ways to help replenish that capacity when it is taxed, which we'll talk about later. But I think the first part of just the overall work is just to really acknowledge the realness of it, right? The suckiness of it, the way in which it is big and true and does have an impact. Because once we have that acknowledgement, then we'll be much better able to think critically and thoughtfully around what types of supports do we need or would benefit us at this time. And knowing that that answer to that question can always shift and change. Right. So always kind of being curious and being real about what's happening is oftentimes the best initial first step.
I really like what you said about this idea of, just being real with yourself, and what is happening, what you're feeling. But I do think too, for a lot of folks, it's like hard to even know, like, when am I hitting that point until it's too late that you're so expended that you don't even have the resources to like maintain yourself. So, in your experience yourself with your clients, what are some signals that you often see or cues to say like, hey, I'm about to like hit this max?
That's a really great question. And I think it's an individualized answer, but I think there can be a common practice of checking in with yourself, right? Maybe that's daily, maybe that's weekly, but just taking a couple of minutes to check in with yourself and to notice how you are doing. And it is very true, like you said, sometimes it's hard to put a word to our feelings or to know necessarily what it is. But oftentimes I like to think about it either in terms of like a gas gauge, if you will, in a car, or a battery gauge with all of our electric cars now, or
a flying battery,
or also potentially like think of it kind of like a bank account, right? Like, what is the balance? What is the level? Are you on E? Are you like a quarter of a tank, right? A half a tank, or maybe half a charge? Are you in the red? Are you overspent? Is your count over withdrawn, type of a thing? And oftentimes just trying to put ourselves on a little bit of that gauge can give us a more quick read. And with that read, if we're under 50%, right, or maybe under 25, or maybe even under 0, then that'll again give a better springboard for, okay, now how do we respond to this, by first kind of gauging where we are in that moment.
This kind of reminds me of something I think I've heard you talk about before called the window of tolerance. Could you just share a little bit more about what that really means and how that functions in this way?
We all have this window, if you will, or this kind of band of capacity where we can function optimally, right? We have the ability to respond to situations, to take care of ourselves. Our energy can kind of appropriately meet the moment with what the needs are at that time. And there are ways in which we can get kicked out of that window of tolerance, right? So when there are these different types of stressors, sometimes the way we respond, we can kick high and sometimes we can kick low. Right. So it's good to note that if we're in that lower registry, then it's hard to have the energy or the motivation to feel like we can do the things we need to do or the things we want to do. Right. Sometimes that can be as simple as taking a shower, something that can feel like it's right there and it should be easy to do, but we're really feeling like it's hard to kind of work up the inertia to do that. For other times, if we kick high, then that means we're feeling really over aroused and really highly energetic. And it's really hard to feel like we can ground or kind of calm down. So when we're able to kind of notice if we are, with our gas gauge, where are we, so to speak? Are we in that lower register? Are we in that higher register? Then again, that can give us a good proxy to think about how do we come into that window of tolerance or into that place that can help us to be more present in the moment, and to better kind of take care of our needs in the moment as well.
Yeah, and I think the window of tolerance is really helpful to think about because it really does show like the dichotomy of you can really be, in either direction. Like sometimes you're so overwhelmed that I know, and working with me, like I can tell when I'm starting to hit that because all of a sudden I feel like I have to do every single possible thing in one single day. And I'm like telling myself, like, why am I feeling like it is, do or die? And then sometimes on the opposite end, it's true, like simply just folding my laundry. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And it's a mindless, simple task that will, make my life better. But sometimes, you have to realize where you're at.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that too is to notice with a space or like a lens of non-judgment, right? Because I think that again, if we have the fear of if we have judgment present where we think we should, and you'll notice me keep doing these air quotes around should, right? But if we should feel like we should be able to do things differently, we should be able to respond differently, this shouldn't be as hard, then that internal judgment or criticism is actually going to make it harder to kind of respond in a way that can help to draw us out of that window of tolerance. But if we have that real honest, compassionate acknowledgement of like, today is a hard day, right? Today is one of those days that I don't want to do it, or today is a day where I'm feeling so behind and it is do or die and I've got to get all this stuff done, right? The more, again, just honest, candid, compassionate, non-judgmental we can be in taking those readings or kind of noticing where we are, then it's going to make it, again, a lot easier to respond.
Let's say we figured it out. We know we're hitting that point, but given life, given our responsibilities, we can't just say, you know what, today I'm just going to completely like disconnect. You're a parent, you're working, you have a lot of responsibilities. So what do you do when you're in that kind of moment? You know that you're not in your window of tolerance and you still know you have to get shit done. And that's really hard.
Yes. And again, just to honor that with compassion too, kind of in that recognizing of that too. And I think that that's where what's kind of cool, again, if you think of the window of tolerance as this middle bar and there's a low register and a high register, then there's different things you can do to, again, either come up or come down, right? To kind of aim to get into that optimal functioning bar. And if you're on that lower register, some of the different things that you can do to be supportive and kicking up is to think about what are some different activities that can maybe help with getting your blood running, right? Or your energy running. So maybe that's, physically getting up if you're sitting down. Maybe that's going for a quick walk or a walk around your place. If you happen to have an option to do something like jumping jacks or just to jump up and down, just even, 10, 20, 30 seconds of those will really help to get your energy running. Another thing that can be really helpful there is to look at what are some different like quick wins you can have to really help with feeling a sense of accomplishment. So maybe that is like folding 2 pieces of laundry, right? Or maybe that is giving the dog fresh water, right? To use that example. So it doesn't have to be, you have to clean the whole house, right? Think of a couple of small things that you can do to get that sense of momentum and completion, which will be really helpful to kind of boost your energy into that higher level. If you're in that higher level and you kind of need to calm down or you want to chill, one of the things that I always like to offer in that is to use your senses to help with ground in the moment rather than kind of being maybe in the thought swirl of your head or that like really heightened sense of physiological arousal with a higher heart rate or anything like that. So if we're thinking of physical senses, there's a really cool technique called 5-4-3-2-1, which is really wonderful. And that's where we can look to see, using our senses, what are 5 things we can see around us, right? And to name them out loud. So I can see a window, a lamp, a guitar, a coffee cup, and a sweatshirt, right? And then to say, okay, now what are 4 things you can touch in this space, and to try to actually touch them, right? So I can touch my shirt, I can touch my hair, I can touch my nose ring, I can touch my eyebrows, right? So again, you don't need a lot of different things around you. You can touch what is physically on you. Then you want to think about, what are 3 things I can hear? And to slow down and to really think about, what can you hear? I can hear traffic, I can hear kids outside, and I can hear the wind. Right. So you noticed, even in me just pausing to do that, I had to slow down to really notice, what can I actually hear, and to say it out loud. And then you want to think through again, what are 2 things and what are 1 thing? And there's 2 versions of this technique. One is to do what you can see, touch, and hear for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So you're funneling down, but you're using each of those 3 senses every time. Or you could do it like we just did, the quicker version of 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, and continuing to then go 2 things you can see, 1 thing you can touch. So you're continuing to do that. And I've done that activity live with clients when they're coming in that more highly aroused, kind of anxious state. And the calm down is really quick and immediate. And it's good to note that with that one, you can do it once, you can do it twice in a row, right? You can do it more than 1 time to help with that calming energy coming too.
I think those are really, really great strategies. And I know I've definitely used the 5-4-3-2-1 in my day. And I think that it is super effective, because it's true, like just taking a moment to really like reconnect with your surroundings and just be like, okay, like I can breathe, like I'm here, I'm contained, it's okay, is so, so, so powerful. I will say it might be a little hard for me to do jumping jacks before going into a meeting, but
Yes. And again, what's nice about these is they're ones you can kind of like keep in your back pocket, so to speak, where they don't require a ton of equipment, excuse me. They don't require a lot of space always. And so they're ones that you can kind of do at different times and at different places. And yeah, if jumping jacks aren't necessarily a thing that's potential, even like arm circles, right? Just thinking about the different ways of aiming to move to help with gaining that inertia, and could be dancing. Dancing's also a great one too.
yeah. So next time, you see me rubbing my eyebrows, it's probably because I think the economy is failing and I'm having an existential crisis.
And if that sense of overwhelm is so, so, so great, or it doesn't feel like there's an opportunity to get into the zone that you need to do, then one of the things that I also encourage is this other technique that's called STOP, and it's an acronym, STOP. And in that acronym, what we first want to do is stop, actually stop. So picture a stop sign, like stop what you're doing. Take a moment to kind of see where you are. And then you want to like pause and proceed mindfully. Right. So you really want to think about, okay, let's stop the momentum that feels like it's going too fast. Let's take a little bit of an audit of where I am, and then proceed mindfully and think about what is actually something that needs to happen next. And maybe that is using an additional technique like 5-4-3-2-1 or box breathing, which is one I know we can share as well. Anything else. But oftentimes, as you kind of articulated, we need to just break that momentum and reevaluate what is the priority right now, and to note that the pausing to take care of ourselves is a really important one. And it could be that after we have a chance to calm down, we realize that all the things we thought we had to do today, we really don't. right? So what actually are the priorities of the time? And then that can be really helpful to reset too.
Of course, I know for me too, like sometimes I'll get so in my head with like my to-do list that I'm like, I have to do all this today. And then it really is me just taking like 5 minutes to be like, okay, like what truly like from a prioritization, like what actually needs to get done today and what can I realistically do Monday or do tomorrow. And just again, giving yourself that space and grace to be flexible with yourself, I think is so important in all of this too. Have any kind of final quick coach tips?
I would just say one last thing that kind of came up as you were just speaking that last part is to note that everything is an opportunity to learn, right? So not doing it right the first time, or not feeling like you remembered to do it exactly the first time, that's all okay. Because again, the more we practice, the easier this becomes. And I know that's kind of a frustrating answer to hear sometimes, is it takes practice or it takes time. But ultimately, the more that we aim to support ourselves through incorporating these practices and being real about how hard things are and having compassion around our needs as well, then ultimately it'll feel less like I'm doing something wrong, so I need this, and more about recognizing like my system is in a state that's going to make it harder to be present in this moment. So let me shift that. And it can be more of an empowering piece. So just to really encourage that, or to offer an invitation to see it from a place of growth and compassion versus problem and need. And that I think can be really helpful too.
I really love that because I do, again, coming back to compassion, like hard things are happening and everyone, we're doing our best and we just need to give ourselves that space to feel the things we're feeling and also figure out what we need to do to continue to support, our values and our goals. So I really, really appreciate all of the insight that you've shared today, Megan. And thank you so much for joining us for the first official Ask Wave episode. I couldn't think of a better co-host. To everyone who viewed, I really hope some of these strategies help next time you're feeling stuck with that existential dread. I know it can be difficult to practice or apply these strategies in real time. So just to say, working with a wave coach can definitely support building and maintaining these skills. If that's something that you're interested in, as Megan mentioned at the beginning, our coaches will really work with you to tailor your care to your individual needs, what works for you. We really do understand, that one size doesn't fit all approach. So if you're interested in scheduling your first session, we do have a link in the bio. Additionally, if you have a topic or problem that you'd like us to discuss in an upcoming episode, our social links are in the bio as well. You'll see polls from us from time to time, but always feel free to shoot us a message and tell us what shit's got you down in the world today.
Yes, thank you so much, Kat.
Well, Megan, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. And everyone, like I said, next time you're feeling a little stuck, maybe just do a little 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I know I'll be doing that this weekend.